everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. It's another fine Wednesday morning here in the city of Philadelphia. Another coffee break chat. I'm your host, James Jackson, he, they pronouns, executive producer, Light Thief Productions. Hopefully this is all working. I had a little weirdness here starting the live stream on Facebook, but YouTube seems to be working, and so does everything else, so we're just going to go with it. We got a good show for you this morning. Knowledge has been a passion, which has not lost its charm. We're going to talk about the Philly mayoral results, council results, general election, which is coming up in November. This is a primary, remember, and what it all means. We've got some great guests for you: Timothy Reimer, Rick Lewis, Robert Jaffe, and we'll talk to them in a moment. I just wanted to first say congratulations to Cheryl Parker for winning the Democratic nomination. I hope to get both Cheryl Parker and David O back on this show in short order to talk a little bit about the general election and their campaigns and see where they see things going. So, I mean, let's just jump right into it. Let me bring up my guests. Good morning, everyone. Let's go from left to right. So we'll start with Timothy. If you could introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do. I can't hear you. Oh, you're on mute. Let me fix that for you. There you go.
Hi, I'm Timothy Reimer. I'm a committee person in the 46th Ward 10th Division for the Republican Party. I'm involved in some local environmental work related to the Cobbs Creek Golf Course project, and I just generally have an interest in local politics. And my pronouns are he, him.
Awesome. Rick, please introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do.
Rick Lewis, pronouns are I am, he, him. I am a theater professional and an occasionally active Burlington County committee person over here in New Jersey.
Occasionally active. And Robert, please introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do.
I'm Robert. My pronouns are he, they. I am a professor of film and media studies at Temple University, and I've been following Philadelphia politics pretty closely since 2015. I don't need to say more than that. That's sufficient.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the show, and welcome back. You know, a few folks will recognize Timothy and Rick. You've been on before. Robert, we were engaged in a little conversation pre-election night online, and so I thought this was a good place to have a conversation. So welcome to the show for the first time. You were saying you might have some art projects coming up that you might want to talk about. Let's do that real quick.
Oh, okay. That's cool. Let's start with that. Yeah. I mean, today I'm having a meeting with some film students to work on developing a short film that I'm creating called Binaries. It's about a Black wife who finds a pair of panties in the laundry that aren't hers. And it's about the conversation that she has with her Jewish husband thereafter. No spoilers. Beyond that, I'm also working on editing a number of projects. I think I'm pretty excited for 90 minutes of explosions, but that's coming down the line. I think it's gonna be something. I'm kind of excited for it. And otherwise I'm just painting all the time and just living a life of surviving capitalism.
Awesome. Yeah, surviving capitalism is a full-time job. We tried to do it.
You can do it for so long and then eventually it stops.
Yeah, and then you try and figure out another way to survive capitalism for a couple of weeks. Anyway, let's transition to elections coverage. I gave Timothy the permission to gloat pre-show, since every single one of his predictions was exactly correct. Um, and I find that I find that hilariously great that your predictions were correct, and you are a better political operative than some of the political operatives that were paid well to work throughout this campaign. Um, what let's start with what, if anything, do you see in the post analysis that really confirms things, is really different than the things that you thought pre election that really drove the Parker win?
Um, well, I mean, there were a few things that came out different than I thought. I was rather surprised to see how much support Jeff Brown actually built up among the Black community. I really did not see that resonating as well as it did. But yesterday I was working as a poll watcher, going around to various divisions, and I was really surprised by the level of support for Brown I saw from people. Um, and honestly, I would have thought that would have come at the expense of Parker, and it did not. So that really kind of caught me unaware. Um, and then the other huge shocker, as far as I see things, is what's going on right now in the 8th district with Cindy Bass and Seth Anderson Oberman. Um, I was watching the results, as they came in a little bit, and near the start, it was something like 60-40 in Cindy Bass's favor. And as the night went on, those numbers just kept getting closer and closer and closer. It was something like around when I went to bed at midnight, the gap had closed to like 2.1% of the vote, and there were still about 20% of the divisions in the 8th remaining to report. And then this morning I woke up and I think the gap is now at 1.21%, something about like 250 vote difference between the two of them. I really did not see that coming, but it's going to be remain to be seen how those remaining divisions play out, and whatever the remaining mail-ins we have, because they've only counted 56,000 mail-ins, and that means there should be at least another 10,000 sitting around to be processed. So those are my big surprises from last night.
Rick, any surprises, thoughts, things that you didn't expect or did expect?
I I wasn't shocked that Parker won. I was just dismayed. I kind of felt like the mayoral race was going to kind of come down to whether or not Philly was going to kind of turn a corner and start to become the city that it could be, or if kind of like the old entrenched Philadelphia political machine was going to sort of raise its head. There was a part of me that was thinking if that was going to happen, maybe Reinhardt with her endorsements from former mayors and that kind of thing would be the one to carry that banner. But I think that didn't happen. Yeah, there's a bunch of reasons that I'm sure we'll get into as to why that didn't happen. So I wasn't surprised. I was disappointed. I was really disappointed. I think I saw something like 23.6% was the turnout.
Yeah.
Which, like, you expected it to be low. I didn't expect it to be that low. Coming out of the Kenny era, and knowing that like this was going to be a new era and a new start somehow, I actually thought that the turnout would be probably 10 to 12 points higher. So I was a little bit I
Well,
guess surprised about that.
I mean, just thinking about turnout a little bit. I mean, it is a primary. A large.
Is it really? Is it really?
I mean,
I mean,
yes, it
for
is.
Philly, like for I guess, like I grew up in Philly, like and I think the first one that I voted in was, I can't remember if it was Bill Gray or Wilson Good's first one. It was one of those two. So I guess it would have been 1980. Um, and the Democratic primary is always like the mayoral election thing. The last person I think that came close was Sam Katz. Rizzo would have, but fortunately he died. I know that's a mean thing to say, but so like the Democratic primary is the mayoral election in Philly. So seeing that that was the case, I expected the turnout would have been a little hotter.
Yes, and I want to say yes that the Democratic primary has always been equivalent of the mayoral election because we tend to usher the Democratic nominee into the mayor's office. However, I would say that a lot of the recent gains in voting numbers that we've had have been like youth and new voters. So I would expect that they might not know that so much as those of us who spend our time interminably following politics.
And that's kind of the sad part though, because for the newer voters and the younger voters who actually want to kind of see a turnaround in Philly, like that's why you would hope that their involvement would be greater. And that's why, I mean, like there's no age data out yet really, but the lack of perceived interest among younger voters outside of Center City. I want to make that caveat because in like Center City and like the sort of hotbeds of younger, when I say younger, I mean the 25 to 35 range. Outside of like those hotbed spots, the involvement seemed to be kind of paltry, or the interest seemed to be kind of paltry, which
One of the stats that I found interesting and was surprised by was amongst the all the stats that we have on demographics are coming from an overlay of population data over the voting district. They're not from the actual election committee. And so, like, we won't have demographics on age data unless and until the committee releases that data. But demographically, there's a couple of assumptions we can make when we look at the data, like the majority black districts, 50 to 75%, had a 20% vote for Helen Gim, which I can't figure out other than a youth an engaged youth vote who that would be, who 20% of a majority black district would vote for Helen Gim other than a youth vote. So I found that interesting, and I also think that that's pretty good if you can get out of all of the groups going, you get a representative sample of youth vote. That's pretty good.
yeah, I think there's a part of the black community though that gave Gim the fuck the police vote.
Yeah.
So I like when I like, because earlier I was looking at sort of the map and kind of the divisions and that kind of thing, and I do think that there are some people that look at Parker and are like, "Yay, she the police, she's going to clean things up," and I think some people look at it and go, "This bitch wants to bring back stop and frisk, fuck the
Well,
police."
yeah,
So
but
So I think in the black, but there's also people in Philly, and this again goes back to like the Wilson Good days, like, oh, she black, we're gonna vote for her. and I think that, so I think that's kind of where that division kind of went.
I said have said I'm gonna get to Robert just a second, but we always get lost in little conversations here.
Right.
I think that that the what the vote shows, the differences between mostly black and I forget what it's called on the set, but the 0 to 75 and then the 75 plus black vote. I think the difference shows that Sherelle Parker's strategy of saying, "Hey, we're not stupid. We're not going to take police out of the streets," worked on older black voters. And I think that the districts that she won, being all established middle and working class black districts, kind of also speaks to that. I mean, I don't. I think that's all. I think that's, you know, that's what it is. I don't have a better read on that.
That makes perfect sense. And it actually, something else that I didn't think about, I was surprised this morning at the Latinx support for Parker, like the size of the Latinx population supporting her. That kind of surprised me.
Well, I think that's just indicative of like the Latinx, you know, like support for law and order candidates in general. I mean, if you look at Latinx culture, it's just they support law and order candidates. Robert, not so that we don't get lost in conversation here. What, if anything, were surprises to you, or non-surprises that you kind of felt like held out what you were thinking was going to happen?
I mean, progressives split the vote. You know, like that's what I saw happening, and there was nothing to be done about it because of the division between, well, I would say Helen Gim and voters. So it's in my view, anyway, at this point. And maybe like in general, but so that wasn't surprising. I guess I'm surprised at the margin by which Sherelle won, but not really because of what you guys are saying, because of voting on her face, which was on her lawn signs all across Philadelphia, which is anomalous, right? So she was very much running on being a black woman. And then the conservative aspect of it. Here's a surprise. Conservatives won last night. And I don't just mean because Sherelle won. I mean, if you count Alan Dom and Jeff Brown and Amin Brown, then their numbers are actually just a little higher than the progressives. So I don't know that they voted conservatively. Like they could be voting on her face. They could be voting on Jeff Brown as a grocery store owner, or Alan Dom as a nice man. Well, no, he is. He's a nice white man who doesn't understand that he's responsible for the problems that he's trying to fix.
Ding, 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 ding.
I think he does understand that he's responsible for the problems he's trying to fix. He just doesn't have a way around that.
I don't agree. I don't agree because look, I don't like to say that I trust politicians. Okay, I'm not trying to like be naive here. But during that first debate, he gets asked by the moderator, "Talk to us about your ties between gentrification and the real estate industry and like concerns." Here, it's like, well, all I ever did was take dilapidated houses and refurbish them. I've never gentrified anything in my life. Like when he says that, he clearly doesn't understand what the word means. He thinks it means to do a racism, I guess. And, you know, he didn't understand. Maybe he does.
Or he's lying and he thinks we're dumb.
It could be that he's lying, but if there was somebody that I think was a liar, I think it was Jeff Brown. I don't think that Helen Gim and Rebecca Reinhart and Sherelle were lying. I think that they were, completely lying. I don't think that they were like outright, like just saying things that were just completely, they knew to be false, or they just didn't care about what the truth was. You know, when Sherelle says that, like, oh, I'm not talking about stop and frisk, I'm talking about, what do you call them? Teddy stop?
Constitutional stop and frisk or Terry stops, yes.
Right, Terry stops, not Teddy stops. Yeah, no, I mean, she, to the degree that a politician can believe their own bullshit, I think she believes what she said. Like, no, Hillary Clinton believes that she was doing the right thing when she like deposed Gaddafi. You know, like they convince themselves that they're doing the right thing. Barack Obama thought he was doing the right thing by telling people in Flint, Michigan, that the water was safe. You know, I don't know that it's helpful to think of them as evil and just liars. I do think that what we saw last night was the Democratic machine at full tilt, and it's kind of scary, frankly. Like looking at city council, we had like a couple of opportunities. It looks like Amanda McMulney was like pretty close, but just couldn't get there. And for the Green Party side of me, for the paranoids part of me, there's the part of me that says like, oh wow, they could have like shifted this and maybe pushed this election in a certain way, and we wouldn't know the difference. You know, I don't think that they need to. I think that really what happened at the end of the day was that progressives split the vote, and we didn't listen to each other, and we didn't work together, and now we're gonna have to fight an Eric Adams mayor.
I would call her Lori Lightfoot, but I mean that might be a little bit over the top. But I don't agree that splitting the progressive vote is what led to a Parker win.
No,
no, there's a lot of people out there that are kind of on the same wavelength as far as like, you know, again, we're all terminally political, so we probably spend too much time thinking about this stuff. But the thought is, you know, maybe Rebecca wins if Gim isn't in the race, but Gim does not win if Rebecca is in the race. Isn't in the race, rather. Like, if Rebecca drops out, Gim doesn't win because Rebecca drops out. Those votes don't go to Gim, because Gim
Who else
is...
would they have gone to?
Actually, a lot of what I'm seeing is they would have gone to Parker. A lot of the folks that were split on their, you know, like, that were undecided as of yesterday were Parker or Gim, you know, like 1 and 2, like, sorry, Parker or Reinhardt at 1 and 2, Gim is a controversial candidate, not because of her policies, but because of her. So I don't know how that, you know, how that works out in the long term, but in the short term, that means that she doesn't get elected. I have the numbers up on the screen for council. This was a interesting one to me. Isaiah Thomas, 90,000 votes, but 90,000 votes in a primary, and also 2 full points above Catherine Gilmore Richardson, which in turn is 2 full points above Rue Landau, which Rue Landau had probably the best marketing of any council candidate. I know I didn't stop seeing her name anywhere, news, you know, online and in mailers. So I think that's pretty interesting that these progressive council members got renominated with such a wide margin in a very open field. There's basically 4 pages of candidates, Democratic candidates for at large. that you could have voted for, and you had to pick five, and pulling 12% of that seems like a lot to me.
I mean, it looks like, that seems to reinforce the notion that the progressive vote was split between Gim and Reinhardt if council members can pull those kind of numbers. Although, to be fair, I don't think it was just the progressive vote that specifically was split yesterday. I think it was the white vote in general that was split, with white progressives choosing between Reinhardt and Gim, and white moderates choosing between Alan Dom and Jeff Brown. And that just sort of left Parker wide open to clean house with the black vote. And you had MQS dropping out and endorsing her, and that certainly didn't hurt with the Latinx vote as well.
Well, I had pulled this map up earlier, and it's tough to see because I don't know who color coded this, but they made Reinhardt and Gim basically the same color. I'm a photographer first and foremost, and this I have really good color acuity. I've tested it, and I practically cannot tell the difference between these two colors. And I invite whomever designed this key to review the needs of colorblind people, because this is awful. Anyway,
I'm pretty sure that's actually automatically generated, and the color differences are determined by the number of candidates.
yeah, no, but
value.
the problem is all the Democratic candidates are in blue, in some form of blue, and
yeah, I mean that's the color scheme on the whole commissioner's website.
yeah,
They're just using the
all the
default
Republican
color.
candidates are red, some
Well, I mean,
form of
yeah.
red. So, but yeah, they need to get a more varied color scheme if they're going to have this many candidates. And it's just a web design and accessibility problem. But yeah, I do invite them to fix that. Anyway, but if we look at it, even with the color problem, what you can see is that Parker really nailed down North and West Philly, the established black working class neighborhoods, and that's pretty much as predicted. The Parker is the darkest blue color, and with what are we at now? With 1,531 of 1,703 districts reporting in, she has 32.95% of the vote, and that's been since the beginning of last night. She's held about 33% of the vote as results have come in. Reinhardt has stayed around 23% of the vote, and Gim has increased as numbers came in from the 4 districts that she did well in. And then also she gained these districts, District 1, 39, 18, and 31, flipped for Gim sometime during the counting. And if you zoom in on them, you can kind of see that it's in the more gentrified areas of those districts, where there is more transplant, more folks that are younger, they're buying houses and moving in recently. 24, 27, 46, that's all the areas around Clark Park and in Mantua that, folks are buying up properties with UPenn money and Drexel money, and creating little progressive enclaves around there. So what am I saying? I'm saying that the problem isn't a progressive split. I think the problem is engagement of the black vote. I don't know. Feel free to disagree if you want.
Yeah, I think that Sherelle Parker ran on identity politics, like over and over again. Like when you say engagement with the black vote, I think that it'd be very difficult to surmount a case against Sherelle Parker for a lot of voters. Like it's either they voted for her because she's conservative and she wanted to go to war with like crime in Philadelphia, or they voted for her because she's a black woman. There's not a lot of other wiggle room in this. So I don't think that there was much that Helen Gim or Rebecca Reinhart could have done. If we had ranked choice voting, I think Rebecca Reinhart would have won. That seems pretty clear. But I don't. I'm gonna pause. Let someone else talk.
No. Continue that rant. Actually,
No, you're fine.
I feel like when you say that it wasn't a split of the vote, I couldn't disagree more. And I believe it's because of, from what I've seen from you, James, rancor for Helen Gim, like literal disdain for her. And I think that disdain might be fair.
Okay.
I voted for her, but I think it might be fair. Like, no, my experience with Helen Gim is to be blown off by her office. My experience with Helen Gim is to see her vote for this pharmaceutical thing, to like not have to have people declare themselves, and like to go up to her and like say, hey, this doesn't look good, back in 2019, and for her to say, oh, I didn't want it to not look good, and then that be it. I understand that she maybe, I don't know exactly what happened, so maybe she blew you off, like in your organization off, and that's bad politics. But on the other hand, Sherelle Parker's not talking to me. She's not talking to me. She's not engaging with me at all. And that's bad politics too. So I want to pull this back to something we were talking about before, because like, yeah, maybe she's going to win outright, but I think there's about 80,000 voters right now, maybe less, if like some of those Reinhart people were going to vote for Parker, but a good amount of people who really don't want her to be the mayor. And further than that, she's to the right of David O on the 76ers arena.
Yeah.
She is equal to him on stop and frisk.
Not actually. I mean, you saw the interview that I did with David O.
Right.
David O's thing is David O's position is interesting to me as a politician. His position is always, is this actually my responsibility or something that I'm supposed to be engaged with? He has his opinions, but where he draws the line is whether or not his position is supposed to be engaged with that particular opinion. Beyond that, he's true to his opinions and his convictions. So if he says, like, I'm for this or I'm against this, you can count on him to actually follow through on that. But it's always interesting to me to figure out whether David O is going to engage on a specific topic, because whether or not he feels like he's in the correct position to engage on it.
Could you create some clarity? Because like I did watch it, but it's not clear in my head. Where does David O stand on stop and frisk?
His stance on stop and frisk as a candidate is, I'm going to have to get into office and figure out whether or not this is something that will actually fix crime.
Moderate then.
Right.
So he's more moderate than Sherelle Parker on stop and frisk. We're either potentially going to have a closer race for mayor than we've had before, because I personally am not going to vote for Sherelle Parker. And it's just not going to happen. I'm not going to do it. If there's not a third party candidate, it's either no confidence or I'm going to vote for David O because I think he might be the better candidate, frankly. And like, you could argue this, you could tell me I'm wrong, but I don't think that he's not an anti-abortionist. He's like a Jeb Bush Republican. He's moderate.
So as far as I can figure out, this is what I was talking about. Like, as far as abortion, he's going to say, I'm sorry, I'm the mayor of Philadelphia. I have no say in whether abortion is legal or illegal.
Sure.
And
then
same thing
worry about.
with trans rights or anything else that is a social political issue. He's going to be like, I'm sorry, this is a national issue. I'm the mayor of Philadelphia. That's what, and I guarantee, and I'm going to have him on the show again, and we're going to talk, like his candidacy and his run against Parker, because I appreciate that he wants to bring at least some debate to what has been a foregone conclusion for the last 30 years in Philadelphia. That his whole point behind running is to say, hey, a Republican can win in the city of Philadelphia. And to your point, I think there's a lot of moderate Democrats who might look at O and say, you know what? He's always supported the arts. He's always taken a logical position on things, and they might go, it might not be bad to have a Republican mayor of Philadelphia because it's not national politics, and he's not backed by the national Republican Committee. I don't know. I don't know that it's 80,000, but and I don't know that it's enough to bring him into office, but I do appreciate that he's at least willing to run and bring those questions up.
I mean, I'll say, without a doubt, it is not enough to bring him into office, not even close. It will be enough for him to make a nice splash on his way out. Because clearly he, has other plans in mind. You don't, resign your position on city council as a Republican to run for mayor, assuming you're going to win. And also, he also did not run for ward leader last year, so he's no longer the third ward leader. So I mean, clearly there is, either he's getting out of politics or he has some other plan. So we'll see. But I do think we will see some extra votes for him. It's not going to be enough to shift the scale in any meaningful way. Although I bet his next campaign finance report, comes in a lot heavier than it would have if Parker hadn't won.
I agree with that assessment. That was actually my big worry going into this primary, whether if it became a GIM-O general election, because I think neither candidate could actually get things done. And here's my disdain, as you put it, for GIM, is not it is driven by personal experience, but it is echoed by a lot of anecdotal reports from other people that I have spoken with directly and worked with directly, which is she's a great activist. She's great at arguing for causes and positions which make logical sense. What she's horrible at is forming any sort of coalition or working with anybody to get those things done. I pushed back against Brendan McPhee. Brendan McPherson, very high-priced, progressive Democratic, campaign runner, was brought onto the GIM campaign probably 3 months ago, I think. He was touting certain things on his Twitter and in his messaging, the eviction moratorium and the housing bill, and saying those were GIM initiatives. They weren't. And people who are in and or closely follow city council knew that. I don't understand why he tried to sell those as GIM initiatives other than they play well with progressives, but you already had the progressive vote in GIM. Like, you didn't need to play well with progressives. Go ahead.
Well, they didn't have the progressive vote. Again, Rebecca Reinhardt has snatched a significant portion of it because of what you're talking about. And I think she could have gone even more if she actually wanted progressives, but she didn't. I think you're making a solid point about what I was saying about Helen Kim kind of showing her own like failure here, because she's not good at playing well with others and building coalitions and playing nice with others, right? Like to this point, when I looked at the Sherelle Parker win article last night, they said this was a huge loss for Helen Kim. Rebecca Reinhart technically beat Helen Kim, so shouldn't it have been like this is a huge loss for Rebecca Reinhart? But no, the establishment worked overtime to beat her, to defeat her. She was what they needed to defeat. That's why Jeff Brown ran in the first place. Really, I think. You know, that's what Sherelle Parker even said in her Nutter interview. She said that like what convinced me to run for mayor was somebody on council. She was talking about Helen Kim. They hate her.
No, I know the inside story of that. That quote, and the inside story of that is that Daryl Clark actually encouraged both Parker and MQS to run. But yeah. That's the somebody on council, but Clark was seeing himself out, and I don't know why, but he encouraged, I think, too many people to run at the same time.
Unless it's what they wanted, because this way you can have like a diffused field, and then you can have somebody like Sherelle Parker go into Northwest Philadelphia and West Philadelphia and just clean house. No problem. Like, and I think, like, I'm kind of like, why aren't you considering that Rebecca Reinhart was like kind of like an Elizabeth Warren here? Like, look over here for progressives. Like, I'm not saying that she was bad, and I'm not saying Elizabeth Warren was bad either. I'm just saying that like they're a diffused version of Bernie or a diffused version of Kim.
I'm trying to find the graphic. But doing two things at once is never my strong suit. There's a graphic that I posted this morning that is, the race and income breakdown of both of the Democratic nominees, and it just clearly shows that in majority black neighborhoods, and even in almost exclusively black neighborhoods, black folks were not going to vote for a white woman. Reinhart got 2% of the 75 and over percent black vote. She got 12% of the 50 to 75% black district vote. That's not splitting progressives. That's because Gim surprisingly actually had more support than that in those districts, and that says to me that it's not a progressive problem, it's a communications problem. It's a I brought this up after the Get Out the Vote, the Bernie and AOC rally. There were no people of color in that rally. There were none.
Also false. That's like, you can look at the photograph and you can see, like, in that corner where you can actually see people's faces, there are 3 black people's faces. There's an Asian face. There's some white faces. Like, I'm not saying that it was,
but come on, you can't call you can't call it a diverse coalition if you've got a total. And I did zoom into those pictures, and I counted, even if they're overlapping, I counted them, 10 total people of color, especially black voters. And
how'd you call it the black space where people are in the shadows and the upper?
I have technology. I can push out here. I mean, I have good technology. I can push out shadow spaces.
Well, so wait. So no, I agree with your assessment that there were not a lot of people of color there. There were probably more than 10.
Sure. I mean, like,
it's fair because the venue was very dark. But Helen Gim's campaign posted on their Twitter a video of the line outside to get in. And they go through on fast forward, but it was a blur of white. I mean, and that was in broad daylight. There's no mistaking, anything, that you could blame on the lighting. Like that rally was in no way reflective of the demographics of our city. I mean, were there more than 10 people of color? I definitely think so. But also their cameraman went out of their way to make sure that the few people of color that were there were included in the photos. And most of the people of color who were there were on the stage.
Yep, I agree with that assessment. Let me bring up this graphic in a sec. I think that is the actual problem. I think that's where we get to a Parker win, because in order for Parker to not have won, you would have to have some impact on the black community, and some I don't want to call it theft, but siphoning off of votes from older black established middle class voters, in order to get a win with Parker in the race.
So go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, I just didn't see a way for anyone else but Parker to win, and that's why I called it the way I called it. Like, it's just the math of the candidates that were remaining come election day just didn't work out for anyone but Parker. There was no situation that was going to change that.
Here's the graphic. I've put it up on screen. I don't know if you guys can see it, but we've got strong majority black districts, 58.4% for Parker, 8% for Reihart, 10% for Gim, 9.5. Surprisingly, 13.4% for Brown, which I think I don't think it's actually surprising when you look at his campaign from the beginning was to pull on like the black vote, but I don't think you get a white guy winning enough of the black vote to actually show well. And then it's. I think this is where you're right, Tim. If the numbers don't work out for anybody else but Parker, but I think the big problem wasn't a progressive split. I think that because if you look at the majority white districts, you look at the even strong majority white districts, they're pretty handily in the bag for Reihart. That's why you had Reihart finishing second, or third rather. Second, sorry. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I think it's more than just a split of the progressive vote. It's a split of the white vote in general. I mean, this is the way I see it is this is sort of the opposite of the progressive playbook. A lot of times we'll see progressives in our city come into a crowded primary and just dump an obscene amount of money, to try to sway things to their candidate. And in this case, it's sort of the opposite. We have a very crowded field, and the machine was just able to come and dump a bunch of effort in, while progressives and moderates were fighting each other and just push things over the top.
This data, by the way, is from last night. I haven't updated or found an update of it, but yeah, when you go to by income, I think that's also an interesting metric here. And then Also, a sentiment that I saw this morning that I really actually appreciate is that, clearly poorer black voters held a pretty strong line and their voices were heard. This is the candidate that poorer black voters wanted. She spoke the language of what they wanted, and frankly, good.
Good.
Did she really speak the language of what they wanted? I don't know. I don't know about that. I'm kind of with Rob in the whole, it was her face. Because when you think about it, I mean, how many black voters really want to be stopped and frisked? How many black voters want to have, like I was watching one of her commercials and she talks about, rebuilding the economy in Philadelphia. And her tag is, I'm going to rebuild the economy by building 30,000 units of low income housing. What? And by rebuilding Philadelphia public, like none of those actually have any sort of foundation or substance when it comes to actually dealing with the lawlessness, which was her other term, of the city. So I think, like, when you listen to what she's talking about, other than, all of her cop shit, there really isn't any, there's very little substance. There's very little of her saying things that people actually want or things that the city actually needs. I kind of agree in the whole, like, when you look at it, like looking at it now, you're right. There's probably no path for anybody other than her, unless, and I, like, I hate to say this because, like, and James, you and I had this conversation. I would have rather have seen Reinhardt or Gim than anybody else in the field. And my hope was that the battle would have come down to the two of them. But even what you're saying about how, without engaging the Black community and without siphoning off a large chunk of the Black community's votes, neither one of those two had a chance. But that confirms the whole, this had very little to do with policy. This had very little to do with what people wanted to hear. This had very little to do. So this had everything to do with, like, Philadelphia politics and Philadelphia having a larger percentage of Blacks than any other demographic. And then that those factors being the thing that kind of pushes her over the top, which has nothing to do with saying what voters want to hear or promising to fix things that needed to be fixed, and everything with, oh, she a Black woman, we're not going to vote for Reinhardt, we're not going to vote for Dom, we're not going to vote for Brown. Here we go.
I think the language that she spoke that people wanted to hear was specifically older Black women.
I think it has more to do with the fact that she's an older Black woman than it has to do with her saying what older Black women want to hear. Honestly.
Okay.
Because she didn't, other than I want to make the streets safer, which everybody said, other than, like, saying that sort of thing, even the way she wants to go about making the streets safer isn't necessarily what older Black women want to hear. I don't know.
I hear a lot of the church ladies, saying, well, we can't lose cops. We can't have less cops. We can't defund the police.
But everybody except Gim was saying we're going to have more cops.
I think Gim said we're going to have more cops too.
Yeah, Gim said I think I've said this about 1 billion times, but their text on their campaign pages about public safety was word for word practically the same. I mean, like, if you ran it through ChatGPT, both of them said the same exact thing. But
the one thing that I think is missing from Sherelle's, she's got a page for public cleanliness and greening Philadelphia. If you look at her webpage, And she literally has like a kind of a paragraph which is just about cleaning, and there's literally nothing about greening Philadelphia. I we talked a little bit before about like disengaged voters. I think that's really the other thing that we're looking at here. Besides, identity politics, people don't give a shit. Like, they're tired. They just want things to be like normal again, and they never will be. But forgetting that, they just want things to just go back to like be nice and even. So I don't know. I've been driving Lyft for the past like few months because I have to survive capitalism again. And I've talked to people because I'm a bad Lyft driver, and I just talk to people about politics. I shouldn't do it. And what I find is, James, you're not entirely wrong. There is a contingent of people who are really just like, we need to bring law and order to this environment. And I think Sherelle does speak to that. But the majority of people do not care.
No, but by saying that, but the majority of people do not care. They just want to get on with their day. They just want, and I think that those people fall back onto what is considered common sense, which isn't really common sense. And all of us who look into these things and study these things and think about these things realize that more police doesn't mean better results and less crime. But I think the people that don't care enough, that just want to get on with their day, that just want to go to work, come home, put their feet up on the couch and watch TV, they're great people. I think they don't realize that the common sense thing of cops solve crimes isn't true. And I think that they fall back on the nationalism and tropes that we inject into our society from age 0 to like 18. So that's where I think we get a lot of, and I think the older Black community is perhaps more subject to those tropes than most communities. That may just be my opinion, but I have older Black family, and they're anti-government. They're Jehovah's Witnesses. They hate government propaganda, but they believe the same thing. They believe in don't spare the rod as an actual thing. As in, if there's no punishment, people won't be good. And I think that's a relatively common sentiment among the older Black community. This like Christian nationalism exists in the Black community, even though it's not racist in the Black community. It's more about following some sort of law and order. And I think that that's borne out by the statistics of Latino voters, Latinx voters, and the Black vote that went for Parker. Maybe I'm wrong. It is 11:02. I do want to wrap this up. I just want to get one thing out of each of you, and I'll go last, just because I like to have the last word sometimes. We'll start with Timothy and go left to right again. What do you think a Sherelle Parker mayorship looks like?
Pretty much more of the same. We're not going to get any major changes. The one thing, Parker has kept a pretty tight lid on development in her district. And, I do see her possibly empowering the community more in their interactions with developers.
All right, Rick.
I agree. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. I think there's going to be more of the same. I think more political, or more blatant political grift, honestly. And I think that unions like the FOP are going to be emboldened to kind of return to more of the things that make it unpleasant. I think Philly's going to become a worse city overall, noticeably.
Robert.
I don't have anything to add that they didn't say. I think that Sherelle Parker's, we're going to see more cops. We're probably going to see the 76ers arena get pushed in. I don't see a significant move to greening Philadelphia happening, even though we've been making efforts to put tree, like invest in our tree canopy. I don't see that being a priority. I see development being the priority and business being the priority, and I see 8 years of it at least. And I think that, I don't know. I see some people leaving Philadelphia. That's what
I hope not. I agree in general with you guys' assessment. I think that there are no actual, for all the time we spent talking about, does Gim have a plan? Does Reihart have a plan? And I don't think anybody disagreed that Reihart had detailed plans. I'm sure Gim had detailed plans too, but Parker literally doesn't. And I don't see support for the arts, which is a major component of our economy. I don't see support for it, or even a pathway to actually recovering our economy from the pandemic in a fuller sort of way. I predict that it'll be party politics, pay to play. We're going back to, if I want to get something done, I need to have $100,000 to drop into somebody's campaign.
Sorry.
Do you disagree?
No, that's been my thought this whole time about Sherelle Parker. She looks like when I think of like the quintessential machine candidate. That's what I see, like Clay Davis bringing bags of money and dumping it in her office. That's what I see. I don't mean to make implications, but if there was somebody who was doing that kind of thing, I feel like it'd be Sherelle. And yeah, it scares me.
Yeah, it doesn't scare me so much as it annoys me. We had the possibility of several candidates who, pretty much every candidate was focused on something else. Hopefully, running against O will actually bring some of this to the forefront, and there will be some sort of movement in our campaign. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see.
I'll bet right now she ignores him.
Yeah, probably. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me this morning, and thank you for talking, the political quagmire which we now find ourselves in. I appreciate you guys joining us. Yeah, let me know if you guys would like to come back on. We're probably going to take a little break for a few weeks here. I have a headache from being up till 1 a.m. and trying to
it gets better.
Follow all this, but we're gonna try and talk directly with some of the council candidates and bring both mayoral candidates on, and it'd be nice, I think you guys are pretty representative of a lot of the opinions in Philadelphia, and for what it's worth, we're all relatively moderate in the reality of politics. I consider myself a progressive, but in the reality of the global political sphere, I'm probably very moderate. At any rate, thank you so much for joining me, guys. I'm going to go to a one-up of me. Feel free to hang out for a minute or two if you'd like to talk afterwards. I'm just going to sign off the show. Any last thoughts from any of you guys? All right. Thanks so much for coming on.
I'm going to bounce.
All right. And thank you to my audience for watching and tuning in. I really appreciate it. If you like what you see, please subscribe to the channel you're watching. Feel free to subscribe on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. We even have a live player that is independent, and you can pull that up every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. And see if we're on. If we're not on, it's probably because we're taking a break. We do need those occasionally. We do have other stuff that needs to get done around here. And so we'll probably be taking a break for the next couple weeks. And when we come back, we'll be trying to get some of these candidates on so that they can talk about their candidacy and their plans for the city. And we'll also have more artists, as we always do, and more information about upcoming shows, events, things that you can do and see in the city of Philadelphia. So tune in again and hit that notification button so that you get notified when we go live. And I hope to see you soon. Thanks, everybody.